Anytime we can be more in solidarity than we are in opposition to each other, I feel like we all win, right? The patriarchy wants to split women into categories and call them good or bad. Like, are they meeting these fake patriarchal standards? And so anytime we can have a little sidebar and say, maybe plot some destruction of the patriarchy and understand each other a little better, I feel like we win.
Welcome to the Sparkle Project. I'm Emily, a divorced mom of two on my own journey to shine a little brighter. This podcast is here to help you protect your sparkle amidst the chaos and impossible expectations of modern motherhood. If you're a mom ready to choose yourself and shine, you are in the right place. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome to the Sparkle Project. Today's conversation is a little bit different, and I'm going to explain why in just a moment. But I think it's really important that we are considering in our conversations the expectations of society on what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a mom. These are things we're constantly talking about here on the Sparkle Project. But what's really interesting is that the expectations that we're held to as moms and how that impacts our experiences as moms, it's not just women who are moms, who have children, that are held to these expectations. And so today I have a guest joining me who actually is not a mother, but she is somebody who is engaged in these conversations and is doing work around these identity pieces and what it means to be existing in this society. And she is down for this conversation about what it means to be navigating the world, both as somebody with kids and somebody without kids, what we're up against in a patriarchal society, how we can be there for each other and do our best to, I guess, raise the next generation, because that is the reality. That's what we are doing, all of us, in a way, if we are participating in the lives of children around us, whether they're our own or not. And just shining a light on that conversation. I'm really excited for this. This is going to be probably a little bit more of a back and forth where we're both sharing our thoughts on all these things, more so than other episodes, potentially. I'm thrilled about this. So I hope you listening are excited as well. Today we have Emily Maynard, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist in California, joining us. Her work focuses on supporting people healing from high control religion and religious trauma. And again, I am so excited for this. So Emily, welcome to the Sparkle Project. Thank you for being so down to have this conversation. I've been really looking forward to this. We had to reschedule last week and I was like, ow, I want to do this. So I'm so excited to be here with you. Can you go ahead and just introduce yourself? Tell us what we need to know from the get-go.
Yeah, like you said, my profession is as a marriage and family therapist. I'm in Southern California. And I'm not a mother, but I am an enthusiastic aunt to 12 perfect little nibblings. And I try to put mothering energy into the world any way that I feel like it fits in that moment. So I'm excited to talk to you about what it looks like to not be a mother, to have that be a choice that I made, and what else I'm doing in the meantime. Because sometimes that's a little mysterious or just strange for people. I have other friends who get questions from their parents all the time of well, if you're not a mother, what are you doing? And maybe we can explore some of those topics and make it a little easier.
Yeah, I mean, just from the get-go, thinking about that, this idea that we're kind of sold of that's the purpose of being a human, being a woman. I mean, I think that's very much true for most people, that we get messages from society that of course you grow up, you get married and you have kids and your life is going to look some way like that, right? And if we add religion into the mix, I was not raised religious, but just existing in the United States of America, it's pretty unavoidable to not be getting religious messaging too, that there's just a lot of messages we get about that being the whole purpose. So to talk about let's unpack that a little bit too, of when that isn't your purpose, right? Because I think for both women who are moms and women who are not moms, there's truth in the fact that that's not the whole point. That's not the whole purpose necessarily. And so let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Why do you think having this conversation between child-free women and mothers is so important?
Anytime we can be more in solidarity than we are in opposition to each other, I feel like we all win, right? The patriarchy wants to split women into categories and call them good or bad. Like, are they meeting these fake patriarchal standards? And so anytime we can have a little sidebar and say, maybe plot some destruction of the patriarchy and understand each other a little better, I feel like we win. And these problems that we're facing become so much easier when we're facing them together
Yeah.
and being realistic about the options that there are in ways of expressing womanhood or femininity across the spectrum.
Yes. I, I'm here for it. Let's plot against patriarchy, please. So, as somebody who identifies as child-free by choice, can you share with us just some insight maybe on what led to your decision not to have kids?
Yeah, I mean, I acknowledge that not everyone, I'm
Yeah,
just a unique person speaking for myself and my own
totally.
experience. There are plenty of people who are not child free by choice, even if they're, childless. So I was raised in a high control religious environment, kind of at the crossroads of fundamentalist Christianity and a movement called the Quiverful movement, which is based on this idea that the only godly way for a woman to be is to have as many children as possible and to create a quiver full of arrows that then the husband gets to aim at the world. It's actually kind of a weird metaphor when you think about it. But families like the Duggars, the 19 Kids and Counting, the Plaths, I think, are all a part of this movement in popular culture where people might know about it. So I was raised adjacent to that community and then evangelical culture in the United States, which is dominant and currently in charge of our government and trying to make all these decisions for you about, are you allowed to have children? Are you allowed to not have children? So my young life was shaped by these ideas that the only right way to be a woman was to be a mother and to be a mother to as many people as possible, to be kind of the only figure of nurture in their life at home, as a teacher and as a replicator of this system that my parents joined when I was a young person. So we went to a church where it was full of families like ours. I'm the second of 6 kids, and we were considered a smaller family in that community. So I remember being really torn and kind of hiding this secret shame as a teenager, being like, but what if I don't really want to become a mother? I thought getting married to someone from that community and being a mother to as many children as I could possibly have was the right way to be a woman. And I felt really ashamed that there was all these parts of me that were really hoping for a different sort of life for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was something that I was able to leave that community in my early 20s and wasn't dating anybody seriously throughout my 20s. And so I was able to escape the conversations about motherhood because I didn't have a husband or suitable partner. And then that helped me grow in my belief that for me, I was interested in putting something different into the world than being a mother myself. And so by
Yeah.
the time I had a partner and was, able to determine my own life, I wasn't really getting questions about it anymore. My siblings had kids. So, the grandparents' goal was checked off in my family. And I got to really see myself thriving in my dream role for myself, which is to be an enthusiastic aunt and friend to children and mothers and people that I know that are parenting.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I mean, there's so many places in this conversation that I'm like, oh, we're going to have to go down this rabbit hole. But I think that's a really interesting thing to consider how the way that we're raised and the messages we're raised around can impact decisions of how our families are going to look. I mean, obviously, that's kind of what being a human is, and being influenced by culture is very much we take that all in, and from an early age are shaping what we think is the right way to do something from what we're being told is the right way to do something. But I think it's interesting how in that situation, it's regardless of whether in the end you decided to have kids or not, it's the way that the messaging is positioned where it's you have to do it in this specific way. And I think about how that could impact somebody who does want to have children, but doesn't want it to look that way, and how fighting against that, there's going to be inner turmoil no matter what decision you end up making, if you recognize that, wait, this isn't the way that I think we should be doing this, or the way that I think we have to be doing this, right?
Right.
when it's presented as the
Yeah,
only way.
right, in that sort of high control group, there's no alternatives, like, there's only ever one right way to do things, and so
Yeah.
the benefit of that is it's a pretty fragile system, like, once you're willing to crack one little part of it, it usually shatters, and that's who I end up working with in my clinical work. How do you deal with the aftermath of that? But I think in my personal life, like, it was this benefit for me too, that once I could see there were alternatives to what I was experiencing in the high control group. Like once I got out into the world and I realized there's so many ways to be a good woman
Yeah.
and there's so many options, whether you have kids or not, like you still have to figure out how to be a person. There isn't like a path that frees you from the challenges of learning how to parent your children or how to love the people in your life or deal with your family stuff or deal with your own
Yeah.
stuff internally to you.
Yeah. No, it's like we're all navigating the same world. We're all navigating the same systems. I think I'll just say, I think a little bit in important context, I guess, that I probably should have said up front at the beginning is like, I have mom friends, absolutely. But actually, the people that I spend the most time with in my immediate area, the women that I spend the most time with are all child free. And I say all child free, I'm talking about a handful of people, but
Mhm.
some child free by choice, married, have a partnership. Like that is the choice that they made, the decision they made, and they don't regret it, right? I have other friends who are in their 20s and want to have children someday, but just like that's not where they're at right now. And then I have people in my life who are navigating infertility and are child free because of that. And that's a journey they're on. And when we had first started talking about having this conversation, it gave me the space to reflect on that and reflect on like how different are our experiences navigating this world? Like really, what are the differences? And of course, there are differences. Like there are
Right.
real differences in navigating the expectations of being a mother versus not. And I guess the day-to-day realities of that versus not, right? Like there's
Mhm. Yeah, time,
obviously,
money,
yes,
emotional energy.
all the things. Just like
Yeah.
within any one of those categories, having children or not having children, there are plenty of differences there too, right? Like I think about my life and my experience right now as somebody who is divorced and has my kids 50% of the time. My day to day sometimes looks a lot more like my child free friends than it does my friends who are stay at home moms, right? Like that's also part of the reflecting I've been doing over the last few weeks. My life reflects some of those realities sometimes more than somebody who is a mom and has to fight for time for herself. So it's just
Right.
an interesting, I want to just kind of put that out there because I think that's the lens I'm coming at this with. And so you put your lens out there and I'm like, this is mine. So yeah, I think sharing the different perspectives here and recognizing that everybody listening to this conversation can reflect on this in some way too, of like how our decisions to be moms or not to be moms, or like, I mean, for me, my first was like, I wasn't planning on having a kid when I did. I always planned on having kids, but it was a little bit less of a choice than,
Mhm.
some people make when they have their first kid. How we can all reflect on how the systems that we're living within shape those decisions and shape our realities in the day to day. And there's a lot of reflection and like internal work that can be done when we do think about those things. So, anyway, we'll get back to it. So, we are going to get more into kind of the expectations on women and the standards we're held to, both as women with children and women who are child free. Before we do that, I'm curious if you've had any regrets in your decision not to have children and how you've navigated that, if so.
Yeah, I think that's such a good question because it's the thing that comes up all the time. And I
Uh-huh.
think a lot of people say they thought about their future and they realized they would regret not having children. And so they, at least pursued that path, whether or not it was possible for them. And I just want to make room for people to have their own experiences with this. For me, I thought becoming a parent was something that I had a lot of choice around. I mean,
Mhm.
I live in a state where reproductive choice is an option. I had access to healthcare and birth control and things that really helped me have a choice. And
Yeah.
I recognize not everybody lives in a state where that's a reality right now, which is terrifying. But I think for me, it was like a choice that I wanted to make sure I was all in on because I grew up in a world where children were seen as sort of collateral to a religious idea and not as people who deserved attention and care and formation to become themselves rather than to become this like cookie cutter religious
Yeah.
little arrows in the quiver of your father. Um, I know that's kind of weird to hear. But for me, I was like, okay, I want to be at least 50% excited about the realities of parenthood. You don't know what kind of child you're going to get, what needs they might have, who they're going to be, and you have to be open to welcoming whoever they are into your lives. And my husband actually, when we got together, he was like a little bit more assuming that he would have children in his life. And I was pretty set that I wouldn't when we got together. And that was something that we talked about while we were dating. And the kind of decision we made was like, okay, well, we should both be at least 50% excited about it at the same time. And let's just check in and see how it goes. And neither of us was ever more than 50% at the same time. And I would say, like, we weren't even close. There were a lot of other things that we chose to put energy into. Like, in the first 10 years of our time together, I went to grad school and then he went and got his doctorate. So we really invested in education for ourselves, kind of in the decade where parenthood would be a little bit easier in our 30s. And so I would say, like, I don't regret it at this point. Regret is something that you might experience in the moment if you make
Mhm.
a similar choice. I'm sure there's been times where you're like, I regret doing this with my life. But that feeling passes because it's just a feeling and feelings are supposed to be felt. And then they don't usually, they usually fade or dissipate or change once they're actually felt. And I also know that regret is a part of life no matter what you
Yeah.
choose, right? Regret just means a choice was made or something happened. Maybe a choice was outside of your hands, but something happened that put you down one path instead of another. And the life we get, this is the only one we get. And so we don't get to spend a lot of time going back and living in the what ifs. I feel like we are just invited into the now again and again. And regret's a part of that as a human experience. It's not something I have to like live in order to prevent feeling because it means that something went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting way to think about like the fact that it boils down like in this particular conversation, it's like if you have children or don't have children. And there's a lot of, I guess, variation in what that looks like for anyone anyway. As I said, like our lives are all unique and different. So there may be like
Mhm.
pieces sometimes as a mom where I'm like, how is this my life right now? I'm raising these
Right.
two kids and co-parenting 50-50. Or somebody who is a
Yeah.
mom and maybe has options to work out of the home or be a stay-at-home mom and chose to be a stay-at-home mom and still sometimes is like, what is my life right now? And
Hmm.
choosing to not have kids and sometimes maybe having questions like, was this the right decision? Right? Like we question
Yeah.
different things all of the time. And that
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong or that there's a deep-seated regret there. And then of course, like there's
Right.
also so many people living in ways where they have less choices, as you said, like access to healthcare and reproductive health
Hmm.
services, whether that's for infertility or for birth control and being able to have
Right.
the option not to have children,
Hmm.
whether that is like financial resources and having to work outside of the home or having to be a stay-at-home mom, whether that is not having a partner to have kids with. And so you get to an age where that's
Right.
not an option anymore. Like there's so many factors and there's so many opportunities for questioning our life situation in the moment, no matter what it is that we're questioning.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
I think for
okay.
me, it's
Yeah.
yeah. I'm more interested in investing in the kind of
Yeah.
society and economy where those choices get to be made by people and they're easy and
Yeah.
people feel like they have options. Like the ideas of reproductive justice or something that's been introduced to me. I certainly didn't grow up with them,
Yeah.
but the idea that people should be supported in their decision to become parents, whether they're single, whether they're queer, whether they are, in a heterosexual
Yeah.
couple, whether that's difficult for them or not medically. If we created a society where it just wasn't so much of a big decision and a costly decision, we would all be better and there would be actually flourishing for
Yeah.
children in a different way. Because I think that's something that doesn't get considered all the time is like the children and
Yeah.
the life that they're going to have with the parents that they have. We always make these
Totally.
decisions about the parents' choice, not necessarily about the child's experience or potential experience. And I want to see a society where we're like, what can we do to rearrange this so it's actually great for the development of little tiny humans?
Yeah. When you said about in the religion you were raised in and how children were seen in that religion, and I didn't really like consider that of yes, how does it impact you becoming a woman and deciding like, wait, that's not I don't want to follow the expectation that I disagree with. Not as an act of rebellion to that, but just because like that's not actually what I want and that's not how I am choosing to see my value and worth as a human being and as a woman. But there's that piece of like the children and recognizing and acknowledging that you also don't want to have kids just because of like, yeah, I get like the almost like having your own little group of people, tiny humans that you're
Yeah.
raising, right? And it's that I hadn't really considered that in the decision. Like, and that's
Right.
a very, 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 very important piece of the decision. We see a lot of rhetoric around that right now of like, do people want to have kids right now? Bringing them into the world and the current state of things and just how volatile the political climate is. It's a very real
Right.
question people are asking themselves. But I think even outside of that, even outside of looking at a specific context, it's like it is a valid question and a valid like line of thinking of like there's a lot there. It's really interesting to unpack. I also think there's a piece of like how the societal norms cloud our decision either way.
Right.
And that's interesting to consider.
Right. In a patriarchal white supremacist
Yeah.
society, like these questions are not free. They are
Totally.
captured and segregated by systems of power and control and abuse and violence in our culture, right? Like I'm a white woman having this conversation who, like I said, lives in a state where my access to the healthcare that I need is pretty available to me. And we haven't lived in a world like that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious what you notice about the way we, kind of a general societal, we differentiate between women who are moms versus women who are not moms. And do you think it matters why a woman is child free in that conversation, like to society?
I mean, I don't think society cares about women at all.
Well, there's that.
Like the society that we're in right now. But maybe we can think about, if I'm thinking about the context of like friendship and friendships that I have with women who are mothers or who are like mothering young kids right now or, pursuing the goal of having children. I think it matters to me because I want it to be really grounded in this decision and not super sensitive about it.
Yeah.
Like I feel, at worst, like mildly annoyed if I'm in a professional situation and someone asks like, oh, are you a mother or do you have kids? I'm always more annoyed when a man asks it of me than when another woman or non-binary person is curious about my life because I think it just means different things coming from different people. But I think like for me, I want it to be really grounded and so I could be free to not be caught up in my own stuff around that question. So I feel like I'm just like, oh, no, I don't have kids. Sometimes I'll say like, oh, I'm an enthusiastic aunt or, I'm the Disney aunt. I live in Southern California. So I think that helps because it gives someone else like another anchor of my identity. If they're asking like, who are you? What do we have in common? I try to give something back of like, oh, it's not this, but we can talk about this. And I know not everybody who is child free like likes being around kids or has to. I mean, I don't think that's a requirement at all. But for me, I do enjoy being around kids. And so I want to make sure that people know that I'm not sensitive in certain ways around that conversation and I'm happy to engage in it. So I think the why matters in friendship because it's like, are you talking to a friend who's really struggling with, the pain and grief of infertility or losses and the struggle in that area? Or are you talking to somebody who is really like struggling with, the age that their children are at or trying to co-parent or stay at home parent and the challenges that come with that? Yeah, I think the why can matter because it gives us opportunities to deepen our relationships with others and maybe heal parts of ourselves that feel resentful or feel hurt or unsupported in some way.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, if you, as somebody who moves through the world child free, like, does it feel like there are a lot of assumptions made that you have kids? I'm like trying to think about in my own life if I would be aware of that as much, because I do have kids. So if someone asks me, oh, do you have kids? The answer is yes. And I may not notice it as much, but
Right.
does that come up
I
a
think
lot?
because of my age, like I'm in my 40s, a lot of people that I'm around have kids. I mean, I live in
Yeah,
Southern California, which is like a very
totally.
family friendly
Yeah.
area. So I think the assumption is that like a lot of women my age
Yeah.
have kids. I mean, I wear a ring, like I'm clearly partnered in some way to kind of my presentation. So yeah, I think there is this assumption. I think one thing that comes up a lot is like I've heard this idea that women who don't choose to have children are selfish in some way.
Mm.
And I don't always know what that means. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm just like willfully ignorant about that because I'm like, one, how could something that only basically affects me like possibly be selfish to someone else
Yeah.
or like be perceived as selfish? And two, like that's such a weird, I don't know, it's just such a weird thing because I'm like, well, everything that I do is for myself based on my values and my beliefs and how I want to act in the world. And like I can have a meaningful life with deep relationships without them being the children that I birth or my, biological family in some way. Like there's such a limited idea about what a family is,
Yeah.
or like you said, a village or community. And I think often we just like denigrate those other types of relationships while we're pretending to support motherhood. Like economically and socially and politically, like we don't support motherhood at all.
Like 0%. Like
Yeah.
in all of the ways.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think of in my own life the roles that the child-free women around me have in my experience as like just a whole complete person, and then also the experiences with my children. And I actually think about like my son turned 5 yesterday, and we had a little get together party thing with mostly just family. But the only two people outside of family that I invited were two of my close friends who don't have kids. We were not trying to have a kids party. It was at my parents' house. Like I was not about to be like, hey, everybody. And I had my cousin and his kids were there. So I was like, that's enough of a party for me. That's what I have the capacity for at this moment. But I think about like how my friends that don't have children show up for me and are able to show up for me in a different way than friends that do have kids. And that's fine and great. And like there's no value difference in the relationships I have with people with kids versus not. It's really about like our individual connection. Um,
Has that been hard to
yeah,
get to? Like that's what I'm thinking
yeah,
about. Like as we're talking, like is that the norm? Because I think your experience is so beautiful and wonderful and who I try to be,
yeah.
but I'm like, was that hard to get to?
You know, and this is interesting, and this is something that I've been thinking about in preparation for this conversation, is actually the two people that I'm thinking of in particular that I'm close with. One who is child free by choice in her 40s, and one who's in her 20s and like eventually would like to have kids, and that is not where she's at in her life situation. Both of them I met after being a mom. The one who's my younger friend who wants to be a mom eventually, I met her when I was pregnant through like mutual friends, and we became close and have a great friendship. And then my other friend, I had two kids, met her through my now ex husband, and like I had kids. She's not somebody who like loves being around kids, but loves being around my kids. And
Yeah.
it has been very easy. Like it really has had not much to do with me having kids or not. But I will say, I know this sounds a little weird as somebody who has a podcast about motherhood and has like I'm doing other things in service of like supporting moms. I have a very clear like anchoring belief that the whole reason I think these conversations are important and the reason that I want to support moms is because I think too often our conversations about motherhood and about being a mom focus on the side of like being a parent and the parenting and the like those kinds of
Yeah.
things, and that's actually very like antithetical to what I stand for in the conversations I'm having. It's more about like how we become and exist as full humans with that role of being a mom and like the responsibilities that come with that and the like societal beliefs about what it's supposed to mean to be a mom and the expectations on us and the fact that we've taken a lot of those expectations and internalized them. Like those are the conversations I'm having. And so like the whole being a mom part of it is only important because that's the lens with what I'm talking about, right? It's like navigating
Right.
that as somebody who has kids. And so my identity is actually pretty, like, being a mom is, I don't want to say a small part. That's not exactly it, because it's obviously a massive, huge part of my life. And up until a year and a half ago, like, my kids are with me all the time.
Right.
Thank goodness I had the understanding that I was more than just that role before
Mm-hmm.
separating, because it's been a easier transition getting to a place where like 50% of the time I have more free time and time to
Yeah.
myself. And I've been navigating my identity now in this new way.
Yeah.
But I think that I just always, like, that's why I was so drawn to the work of supporting moms, is because I see
Yeah.
that we don't have to just be moms. And I want
Right.
other women who are moms to see that too. So that was like a
Mm-hmm.
very roundabout way of saying
I
that for
love
me
that.
in particular, it has not been complicated having friendships with women who don't have kids. But I
Yeah.
see that that's not the case necessarily for a lot of people. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, I'm wondering if like the right people will flex and flow
Yeah.
in our lives to expand as our identities change, right? Because your identity is going to change again when
Yeah.
you're not, a mom of like littles.
Totally.
When your kids are in elementary school, when they're in high school, right? There's these new waves of motherhood identity, and I think there's these new waves of child-free identity as well. Like my life isn't spent I'm not spending time on trying to become a mother, but I am spending time trying to become a better version of myself, like to figure out
Yeah.
where I have places to pour and give and receive love in my life. And those things are just complicated whether they're about children and being a mother and having a community or not.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's almost like this piece of, which I guess it's kind of funny the way like we're coming to this conversation as somebody who is child free by choice and somebody who has kids. Like, so it's like we have our roles in this conversation. But I think the like reality is that really is like a piece of a pie of who we are. Like, we clearly,
Right.
you and I, like, we hit it off. We have things in common, right? And just with any relationship, that's just going to be a piece of the pie. It's just a piece of who
Mm-hmm.
you are. And again, there's all that comes with that, but it is just one piece. There's so many other ways we relate to people. But having said that, the way that society tells us, particularly like as somebody who's a mom, the way society tells us that that has to be everything and our entire
Right.
role, I don't think that that's necessarily the case for everybody, where you feel like you're not, quote, just a mom. So that
Mm-hmm.
would, I assume, impact the way friendships would be able to be had and relating outside of that role of mother, if you're very much caught up in that being your entire identity, which is the whole point of this podcast, is like
Yeah,
understanding that we are allowed to be and thrive when we are not just caught up in that one aspect of identity, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
I'm curious for you, like, if there's hardships or challenges with friends that do have children, like if there's anything that comes forward in regards to that.
I think the two biggest things that comes to mind is one, there's just time
Yeah, well, there's
differences,
that.
right? Like I'm available
Yeah.
whenever you call. If you're like, I just did drop off, I have 10 minutes. Do you want to chat? I'm more likely to be available because I'm not like, sorry, my child's having a meltdown right now. I have to be present for that. And I just feel like, with my dearest friends, as they've moved into early parenthood, there's just this like there's this joy and wonder at like one, they made a person that I get to love. Like
Yeah.
I like my friends so much. Like I get to see who they made and watch that little person grow and develop, hopefully into like, another member of the Emily fan club. I'm willing to pay for it. Don't worry.
Love it.
So I think the biggest thing is just like time and other relationships, my other friends who have littles, they're so busy that I've just had to expand my expectations of how often we get to connect.
Yeah.
And it makes those moments where I'm like, I'm going to pick you up. We're going to go out to dinner. We're leaving the kids behind, with their other parent is like so precious. It becomes so much more valuable to me because it doesn't happen as frequently. And there's also some sadness in that. Like I miss when I could just be
Yeah.
like, girl, let's go out tonight. We're going to get pizza and a couple beers and dish. It just requires a lot more planning and more flexibility. And So I've tried to bring those, I don't know, perspectives and just say, like, there's a lot more room and I'm not going to be offended
Yeah.
if, like, you haven't called me in a while, because we're not at a time in our life where we're doing the, like, hangouts and calls weekly like we used to. And then the second thing I want to talk about is, like, sometimes having friends who are mothers makes losing friendships or changing friendships more painful because you're also losing relationships with the kids.
Oh.
And so that happened to me. And I think it's something I just want to normalize, is like something that can happen, whether that's if you are a mother and your friends don't get along with somebody else's kids and there just has to be more distance because of that. Or for me, like, I really bonded with my friends' kids. And then when we had a change in our relationship and we're no longer speaking, like, I missed those kids growing up. And there was an extra layer of mourning that I had to do, not just in, like, losing this friendship, but also, like, losing these other people that, I don't really know anything about anymore.
Yeah, that's an interesting component to it that I hadn't considered. The idea of like friends that have children, though, having less time and less capacity in a lot of ways for some of the friend maintenance
Yeah.
things, right? It's funny. Again, there's parts of this where I'm like, I actually stand in a position where I'm kind of walking the line between these two worlds, because half the time
Right.
I'm not the primary parent to my kid and really like don't.
Which is some of the only ways I've heard women talk about equality and
Yeah,
co-parenting is 50-50
well, let's be
custody.
real. I know I need to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
Because it's wild. Although I am the one that the school calls all the time. I'm like, hi,
Yeah.
cool.
Right.
Can you call
Default
his dad
parent.
and let me know if he doesn't answer? But like, he's capable.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, no, it really is like, I experience a lot of these things because actually, like, that is very real. Of like, when I'm like this weekend, I don't have my kids and I have another friend who is co-parenting 50-50 who has same weekends as me. So like we might hang out, and then I probably will hang out with other friends who don't have kids. And I've been walking a line and I just relate to that where I'm like, yes, and I have other friends who have their kids all the time and I see them or I talk to them a lot, but it's usually has to do with when I have my kids, if that makes sense. Because it's strange for me in my particular role sometimes showing up to things where other kids are without my kids. But that's also something I'm navigating and normalizing because it's also just part of my life. So, there's like so many things in here that are so interesting. I'm wondering, like, I'm very big on talking about the perfect mother myth, which is this sociological idea that like that women are held to the perfect mother, the standard of the perfect mother. And there's like all these contradictory pieces to that because the perfect mother gives 130% of her time to her children, but also has an identity as a person, but is committed fully to her husband because she's married to a man.
Always.
All these different pieces. She is dependent on her husband, but also like not so dependent. She has an income that's important, but like is 100% with her kids. Blah, blah, blah. All the things. And I think it's an important thing to consider the fact that, yes, that's a standard moms are held to, but it's also a standard that women are held to. People who are born female. Like, it's
Right.
That is the standard. That's kind of what it's all about according to society, as we've said, right? Like yes.
Right.
We know that that's truth. What are your thoughts on how women are held to those standards, even if they're not moms?
Yeah, I think there's this expectation that I have more time for the, like, aesthetic aspects of womanhood. There's still the assumption that, like, I'm the one in charge of all the social engagements for our household. There's the idea that, like, I'm responsible for the home. And, as many times as I see reels and, people talking about labor distribution in families with children, labor distribution in families without children is still a thing. And it's still something that, my husband and I have had to navigate with, respect to, like, who has more flexibility in their schedule or who is currently in graduate school, and to keep having those conversations rather than just make assumptions that, like, well, I'm doing all the home wife stuff, even if I'm not a mother. And I think that's been really important to just, like, normalize, like, everyone needs to navigate household labor and changes that need to happen over time as life circumstance change. And it's not something that just is like, the cause of mothers to stand up for their right to have time or to have, some freedom from decision making or, holding all the medical knowledge about a child and their needs. So just that, like, I think there's this assumption that we probably don't have a lot of conflict in our relationship because we don't have children, but we probably have slightly less because we do get more leisure time just, naturally, but we still have to have those conversations. And I'm still pushing back against this idea that, my goal is to be aesthetically pleasing for the male gaze and that my home is supposed to be aesthetically pleasing for, the capitalist ideal. And I'm still trying to work through those things, even though it's not in the context of motherhood. I mean, I think I still had to consider, like, what are my ideas about children and how adults should be around children? Because, like I said, I have so many nieces and nephews, try to be very involved in their lives, friends who have kids. Like, how do I want to be? How do I want to, like, say, hey, you can't do that. That's not safe, right? Like, what's my tone for correction? How do I want to handle big emotions? Like, I'm not a parent who has to answer those questions for myself 80,000 times a day, but I have had to consider those questions. Like, how do I want to treat children, even if they're not in my house all the time? And that's been really fun as especially my nieces and nephews have gotten a little older. Now I'm in the, like, questions of, like, how do I treat teenagers? Like, what do I want to do to support these people as they're growing up? And it's really exciting because those questions never get easy. Sometimes they're different with each kid.
Yeah, there's that.
But I feel like I've gotten to, like, engage with them in a really neat way because, like I said, I get as much sleep as I need to most of the time.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I also do half the time get sleep if I don't stay up too late scrolling on my phone, which has been an issue recently.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many Olympics highlights right now. We all have to stay up there.
Yeah, there's that, and just doom scrolling too, which
the world's also bad.
Again, whole other conversation, but yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I think the idea that, like, gender role and the conversations around gender role don't just go away because you don't have kids.
Right.
It honestly, it almost adds a layer. Well, yeah, like, it adds a layer of complexity almost because the assumptions are different too.
Right.
In some ways, although that is
I'm not getting calls from a school, but I'm getting copied on the, like, we're planning a trip with friends or the family potluck, like, so we've had to navigate that. Like, how do we manage that? Like, based on what's actually happening in our lives, not just based on gender role assumptions.
Yes. Yeah. It's, again, we're all up against this patriarchal system and capitalistic system. Like, it's very much true that we all have the opportunity, I guess, to decide how we come up against that and how we fight for something different within our homes and outside of our homes. Because that's what it comes down to.
Right. And I might have more energy for some of those, like, public fights, the, political action or, willingness to speak out just because I'm less of a target or I'm more protected. I mean, I think I have privilege and that's something that I want to use for the good of the world. It's not something I want to sit around and, like, feel embarrassed about. It's just like, well, that's the reality of my life and the stuff that I didn't choose and the choices that I've made. And so how can I use the privilege that I have, the time, the extra money, because I'm not putting in for school supplies. Like, how can I use that towards what I want, which is, like, a world that's safe for children, a world that's safe for women and safe for everyone to thrive.
Oh, I got, like, chills as you're saying that because it really is pretty powerful to think about. Is there any, like, last thoughts that you want to leave listeners with in regards to this conversation?
Yeah, I think I just want more people to talk about this. Like, be brave in your conversations. Ask some other people to listen to this podcast, whether they are in the same life stage as you in parenting and motherhood or whether they're not. Ask if they're willing to listen to a podcast about motherhood and, like, talk about what friendships dynamics came up when I was, pregnant versus now, or what happened, like, what happened to us. And I think the more we can tell the stories of each other, of our friendships, and reinforce, like, what we want to see, like, if everyone's so burnt out, we're just going to keep existing in a status quo. But if we can find moments of hope, imagination, like what would a world look like that protected friendship between people or gave people like more options in their reproduction choices or more support for the hard work that everybody is doing in their lives, like I think we can create a better future even just through those little conversations in our own relationships. So like talk to somebody who's different than you. Be like, does it ever feel weird that I'm talking about my kids this much? Or do you ever feel embarrassed talking about your kids this much when I just like don't relate to potty training like at all?
Yeah.
Like the more we can just like talk about what's actually happening in our lives and our friendships, I feel like the more power and solidarity that we can build.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just kind of echo that and say that like this is not a conversation that I have ever heard had. And that says something in the fact that I'm somebody who has a lot of child-free friends and I'm a mother and am like deeply ingrained in spaces and conversations about motherhood and identity and like navigating this world, right? Like it's, I think just that alone, it's like, okay, this is something that we can bring attention to and focus on and see like when we do open ourselves up to these conversations, what is the impact both in our individual life and outside of that, because we really can come together in a very real way to make change for the future generations, but also for ourselves and for the way we exist in this society and in this world. It's like pretty cool to think about.
Yes.
So something I end every conversation with is about the sparkle, the like essence of your identity, the thing that makes you you. And really when I approach this with other guests, I'm talking a lot about how like the roles and responsibilities of motherhood can kind of pile on and dim that sparkle. But the fact of the matter is that I think just becoming an adult and navigating like the expectations and the things that like you're supposed to do and the conditioning out of like who you are at your core is real for anybody, especially women, no matter whether you have children or not. And so I would love to ask you how in your life you protect your sparkle, because you seem like you definitely do.
Yeah, I will say there are two things that I feel like help me right now that again, I grew up in a sheltered world with no TV, and one of the things that keeps my sparkle is television.
I love that.
I right now I recommend The Traitors.
I'm so into it.
There are so many seasons of it, and it's so interesting how cultures play differently, right? It's like it's a very simple game. It's like the mafia game that you grew up with playing in high school. But whether it's celebrities or like regular people in the UK and Australia versions, the UK celebrities season is the best season of Traitors ever. I've seen it twice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's perfect. I think just like having something that's like low stakes and high drama that you can watch on a weekly basis and talk to other people about, so important to maintaining your sparkle, because it is something you can get really into and think about the strategy you would play and how everybody's doing. And it does not matter and is not connected really at all with the disasters that we're facing daily. So like I do promote some escapism. Second, I think listening to loud music in your car and just like raging is really good. Listen to the songs that you listened to when you were 19. Listen to the songs that like really make you feel something. And my guess is that you're probably spending a lot of time commuting and driving and doing 15, 20-minute or maybe longer commutes all the time. So like sometimes whether you're introducing your kids to your favorite music from when you were 18 or whether you just are like raging out to some Lady Gaga, like please do that more often. I promise you it is like a 5-minute mood booster.
It really is. And you can totally get your kids involved in that. I actually just showed my kids, one of my sons, like, loves rock and roll. And with Green Day, like, coming up and with, you know, just with the Super Bowl and everything, I was like, wait, I have a dream actually. I was like, I'm going to show him this Green Day song. And then I did, and he was really into it. And I'm like, yeah, this is allowing me to be a little bit like emo, reach into my childhood. But I do that a lot with like, there's a Noah Khan song that I like blasting in my car and just like feeling the feels. And I got my kids really on board with blasting it in my car too. And it's great because why not?
You could do it together.
I love that you brought up the traitors. So I just finished season 3 and it like just started
Okay.
the first episode of season 4, which at this
Oh my
point we're
God.
pretty far into season 4, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So no spoilers. But I started it in January when I was having a really hard time with my mental health because of the state of the world and like doom scrolling, as I was saying. And I was like, I need something to escape into that is dramatic enough to hold my attention, but has literally nothing to do with this. And it has been
Right.
just that. Like,
Mhm.
I'm like, seriously, if you haven't watched it, and I feel like I've had a hard time watching TV in the last however many years, like with attention span and things like that, because it's just not, I just don't care. And it has held
Right.
my attention enough to help me not doom scroll all the time and to feel a little bit of relief with that. So I love that you brought that up. And I'm going to have to definitely check out. I've seen the UK celebrity, like the image of it on Peacock. So I'm
It
going to
is
check it out.
astounding. It's just astounding. I mean, I grew up a little homeschool nerd, and
Yeah.
so like the fact that they have Sir Stephen Fry, who maybe nobody knows who that is, but they have Sir Stephen Fry like playing this game of traitors and like quoting Shakespeare at the round table. I was dying. It's the funniest thing in the world. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm really excited. And that's good to know that it's not like I finished season 4 and have nowhere to go. I can go right to that.
No. There's like 3 regular seasons of UK with regular people. There's 1 celebrity. There's like 2 seasons of Australia and 1 of New Zealand. Like they're so different. Like everyone is just like nobody knows how they play the game because it's just so different and fascinating.
I love that. Okay. Well, yeah, definitely. If you're listening to this, check it out if you need a little bit of an escape, because we all need one now and again. Like, yeah, let's be real. There's a lot going on. Emily, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having this really beautiful, rich conversation with me. Where can listeners find you if they are interested in following along with what you're doing?
Absolutely. The best way to follow me is on Instagram. I'm at Emily Maynard, LMFT, and I hope I see you around there.
Yay. Thank you for being here. This was great. I'm stoked on this and stoked people get to listen to this.
This was fun. Yeah. Thank you for editing it all up and asking the questions. I think
Yeah.
it flowed really nicely.
Yeah. And thank you for tuning in. Keep on shining. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Sparkle Project. Loved what you heard? Share this episode with a friend, and don't forget to leave a rating and review to show your support for the show. We'll be back next week with another episode. See you then.